Well, I'm here today with a man who was involved 40 years ago in the making of Octopussy. And his name is Singh, and he's a great lad. And he's here to tell us all about what that was like. So, Del, welcome to the show.
Thomas, thank you very much. I know that he's a great lad. I'm 60 years old, so thank you very much. I'm older than you are, but there you go. Thank you. And yeah, I suppose if I'm going to do the proper intro, I can say the name is Singh, Singh, licensed to tie turbans.
Right. Well, that gives away a little bit of your involvement. So, I mean, how on earth did you get involved to be on the production of a massive Bond film?
Yeah, so it's a bizarre. I mean, the getting involved is as bizarre as the actual job title itself. But let me explain. So I born and bred in Peterborough, lived here all my life. Back in 1982, I was a kind of sprightly 19, coming on 20-year-old, ready to go off to kind of university. But one of the things that I and two of my brothers were doing at the time was we were running, and I challenge anyone, if anybody can actually come up with challenge this, then they can have some money off me. But I don't think anywhere in Peterborough, the world, the universe, there were three Sikh lads doing a heavy metal disco roadshow. So I mean, it really is one of those bizarre things. I mean, so it's bizarre as it was. So we used to run these the Singh brothers rock road shows were quite legendary. Used to kind of be going out there and so it tastes some of my music there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were kind of putting these things on at village halls and stuff, because back in the day there weren't sort of really clubs for this sort of music, and so we would go out at night to illegally fly post. I believe the statute of limitations has probably gone on that, so I'm not going to get qualified now. But we'd go literally sort of pull up, and where a lot of building sites, we'd go out there with a bucket of paste, put a poster up, there you go, and nip off for, got our collars felt. And we were also in the Yellow Pages, Singh Brothers discos. We did heavy metal road shows. We also do kind of weddings, funerals, bar mitzvahs, anything else you wanted as well, without the heavy metal stuff. And people would book discos up over the phone. And one evening, sitting at home, we get a phone call. Is that Singh Brothers Roadshow? Yes, it is. How can I help you? Thinking this guy wants to book a disco. And the first question he asks is, are you a Sikh? And I'm like, yeah. Because the name's Singh is synonymous with Sikh. So, and then the next question is, bizarre, do you wear a turban? I'm like, yeah. Now, what's this got to do with you booking a disco? And back in the day, we used to occasionally get some abuse from the National Front and stuff like that. So I thought this guy's going to give us some grief. So I'll tell him to go and do one before he tells me. But he goes, and before he said that, he goes, no, well, actually, I don't want to book a disco, but I'm phoning from Eon Productions. And I'm being a big Bond fan, back from the Sean Connery days and stuff and whatever. I sort of said to him, well, when he said, Eon, you're the guys that make James Bond films. Yep. So what are you after? And he said, well, we need your help, and we need somebody who can tie a turban. Why? And he sort of mentioned, look, in the film, we've got an actor, Indian actor, doesn't wear a turban in real life, but he actually plays a kind of henchman, and he needs to have a turban, and we need a turban tire, or, somebody who's an expert. In fact, the title became Turban Expert. And I was like, yeah, I'm up for that. I mean, obviously, the idea of being on a Bond film was quite something. And then, there was the potential of earning some money as well. And it was summer holidays before I went off to uni. So a bit of extra pocket money wouldn't go amiss. And I remember my brother and I turned up at this hotel the next day, still thinking it's going to be a wind-up. We thought this is going to be some sort of sick joke. Somebody's played on us, amongst our soon-to-be ex-mates. It all kind of got quite real when we got sort of shown up to this top of the hotel where they're taking that entire floor. Walked into this room, and kind of one side of the room, the eyes immediately drawn to this big puff of smoke going up, and underneath it is Roger Moore with a massive cigar.
Oh.
You think, geez, that's 007 over there. And then Kabir Bedi comes striding across, really handsome guy. Along come the costume people and stuff, and they were like, so introduced us and so on. And then they pulled out this piece of cloth and said, can you tie this on his head? And I said, no. And they all looked at us and said, sorry, you said you could tie a turban? They're getting quite embarrassed. I mean, we're wearing turbans. I said, I could tie a turban, but that's a bath towel.
All right.
I can't tie that on his head. It's about 6 foot long. It's a bath towel. Proper turban's about 13 foot long plus.
Yeah.
As it happens, I brought a turban with me, took it out the bag. It was happened to be one of my great school turbans. And so I proceeded to tie this on his head. And when it went on, it looked absolutely magnificent. And, because he's a big guy, so it layered on nicely and it looked good. And he started moving around. He said, it's not going anywhere. It's not moving. It looks good and it feels good. And, I like this. And they were like, great, you're hired. It's £50 a day. which I thought was pretty good for 1982. And especially now the extras are getting about 20, 25 quid a day or something like that, I think. So I thought we're getting some decent money here. So I was a skilled profession. They said, we only need one of you. I said, well, actually, we only come as a team. It's Singh brothers. And the main reason we did that was not out of greed. It's because both my brother and I had summer jobs working at a local coal store, freezing vegetables. Sounds really just as exotic. And we knew that if one of us was on shift, the other could do the job and vice versa. And so we sort of said, sorry, we come as a team. And they said, well, okay, then fine, you both get the gig and it's £25 each. And I'm like, no, stop. Just up to 50. So it's 50 each. And they're like, no, we can't do that. 50 each too much. Sorry. And I'm like, thank you very much. Kabir took Turban off. I said, I'll put him in a bag. We're going, bye. Good luck finding another person. And they literally looked at each other. And Kabir just sort of started, as we were walking towards the door, Kabir stopped them and said, no. I want these guys. And they came over. And they came over and said, look, we're going to do this. And I said, look, I'm not being funny, but, we know what our worth is and stuff. And you are going to struggle to find anybody else that can do this. We kind of got that gig and both of us got it. And it just meant that we would turn up on set. And as it happens, the way everything fell that month, my brother was kind of like pretty much doing day shifts and I was doing night shifts. We got to the point where I would literally do the job. He wouldn't be there, and I'd often clock in for him. I'd just say, and we just collect the money, and it was all good, and it was fine. But the nice thing is, I had access all areas, unlike the others, and so I could, unlike extras and so on, who had to kind of stay to one side. I had access to all areas. So the thing is, I'd go in the morning, and you look at the call sheets and you say Turban expert on location, 7:45. So they named me Turban expert. So, and I'd take the kind of 5 or 6 minutes to tie the turban. And the interesting story about the turban itself was that originally the costume department had actually put together, the bath towel they bought, or whatever it was, that was kind of like a slightly reddish color. And a dark reddish color, and they were going to do that, and they coordinated that to go with the dark suit. When I put the grey turban on, it didn't really go with the dark suit, and Kabir said, I want this turban, and it looks good. They asked me if I had one that was similar to that color. I said, no, I don't kind of wear these turbans, that sort of color. So they said, I want this turban, and they went and had to re-coordinate his suit. So the suit he wears on the fight scene on the train was coordinated to go with the turban, which is a grey suit, and he looks magnificent in it. It's quite funny because I actually kind of ribbed him a bit about this and so on. He didn't get my sense of humor at first, but he did eventually. I said, Kabir, probably did you a massive favor because you look really smart in this. I said, just imagine if I hadn't turned up with this turban, you'd been wearing that big red thing on your head. And I said, looking like I do with skin color, you just look like a swan vestus, like a match. and all Bond has to do is strike you against a wall and watch your head explode. He was just wetting himself laughing. He was like, he didn't get my humor at first, but he got it.
No.
But somebody that did get my humor was certainly Roger. I mean, because I found I was literally, once I'd done the 5-10 minute job, so the next day it would be a 10-minute job because continuity would come in with Polaroids from the previous day and check to see the turban looked the same and it kind of had the same kind of shape and whatever. But once I was done, I was pretty much there for the day, and they were the idea that it might fall off, which it never did. And so what I did was I'd literally sort of sit around Kabir's trailer. Roger's trailer was directly opposite. He'd normally be outside sitting on the step with a cigar. And so I, would make it my business to go over and talk to him. I was a little shy at first. I thought, megastar guy, but I've never been shy at doing these things. And I thought to myself, I don't want to come across as a fanboy, so I'm not going to go and sort of say, oh, Mr. Moore, I really loved you for years and years and years. I used to watching The Saint. So I just used a different tack, which was a genuine thing, which was my favourite actor of all time was Richard Burton. And I kind of walked over to him and Roger said, I hope not interrupting. He goes, no, not at all. And I said, I just wanted to know what it was like working with Richard Burton. He was my favourite actor. And I just, how was it on The Wild Geese? And, he said, actually, Richard's amazing actor. But one Richard is good, but when you put two Richards together, and he meant Harris, he goes, there was a recipe for disaster because they're both in the film and they both had severe drink issues, or they liked to drop. And so he said, we did struggle with getting things done in a timely fashion because these guys invariably wouldn't be on set or there'd be problems with it and whatever. I said, but the end product is magnificent. He said, well, actually, the film got good reception. It was good. And I think it still remains one of my favorites. I think it's great. I'm not so keen on the sequel, but the first one was terrific. And from there, we kind of struck up a thing because I'm a bit of a film movie buff, and I then sort of had like follow up question, which is a bit loaded. I sort of said to him, "Got to ask you the question," because he knew films and stuff as well. So I sort of said, "What's your favourite film?" And he was like, "Put me on the spot." He goes, "You've asked that question, so chances are you know what yours is." And I said, "Yes, I do." And I told him it was the 39 Steps, the Hitchcock version, which he said is brilliant. Robert Donat, Madeline Carroll. After a few minutes, he had time to think, and he said, "Okay." He goes, "If I've got to pick one," he goes, "There's said lots," but I said, I know the feeling." And he said, "Well, I'll probably go with High Noon."
Right.
And I was like, "Great choice." And I remember saying to him, "You know what? If they ever did a remake, and you could do the Gary Cooper bit brilliantly."
Yeah, he could.
He just leaned into me, and that voice said, "Some things should never be remade."
Oh, right.
And I actually kind of agree with him. That there certainly are some films that should never be retouched, and maybe High Noon is one of those classics. But we developed a great rapport. He'd always acknowledge me in the mornings. I would acknowledge him. We'd have a chat, whatever it was, and he just had this lovely self-deprecating sense of humor. Just didn't take himself seriously. Which wound the journalists up great, because at the time, obviously, Warners were bringing back Sean as Bond, but Never Say Never Again. And they would always try to goad him. They were like, "Roger, is it a case the public doesn't like your Bond? They're bringing Sean back." And he was like, very magnanimous. He said, "Look, Sean is superb." And I'd even said to him, "Sean was my first Bond and still as Bond, but you're good too, in a very different way." And he sort of said, "Yeah, well, I try to make my Bond different, because we can't all be Sean Connery." And there's a lot of license there that Ian Fleming has given to this character, and I try to exploit different elements of that with my personality. And I remember when there were some journalists there from Scandinavia and Germany, and I remember one of them was saying this and goading him, and he said, "Well, actually, there's things that Sean can do I can't, and there's certainly things that I can do that Sean can't." And they were like, "Go on then, so what is it you can do it Sean can't?" And they were looking for a real tidbit of scandal here. And he said, "Well, they leaned in, and he said, watch this." And he did that eyebrow raise. And he goes, Sean can't do that." And they literally just collapsed. And I was pissing myself. Sorry, I was quite kind of, in apoplexy, thinking that's so funny. And they just cut him to the quick. But like I said, a real gentleman.
That's so nice to hear, because we've spoken to quite a few of the cast and crew in some of these Roger films, and we're yet to find anyone who hasn't said what a lovely guy he was, that he was approachable. And even, to be fair, they say the same with Sean, that almost the bigger the star, the more humble they are, the more, I suppose, they're concentrating, they've got the whole film on the shoulders. They've got to have that personality where you're looking after everybody.
Well, I think, to be fair, I mean, the person that had the weight in the shoulders was probably John Glenn, because I really didn't. I was really scared of talking to John Glenn. I mean, he was a man with a mission. He was juggling, kind of spinning multiple plates and doing crazy stuff. So I was damn scared to go near him and sort of talk to him, and I wanted to. But he was always busy, and there were people following him around with clipboards and stuff. And so you think, "I'm keeping out your way." But Roger was just terrific, and because he had downtime, and there was quite a bit of downtime. We were there for about 3 weeks, and then I was there for another week or so with the stunt guys and stuff, the second unit. It's because he had quite a lot of downtime. We did have some crappy weather, and there were some things that weren't going right, and so he did sort of take a bit of time. And like I said, he was very approachable. And I think also sometimes it's a case of, if you, I guess, a lot of stars are very approachable in the right instance and the right way. But I'd imagine if you're kind of invading their privacy, or if you're just being a nuisance and stuff, you can get on their wick. So I'd imagine there must have been a point where Roger probably felt that as well. But I'm glad to say I didn't wind him up the wrong way.
Good. Kabir Bedi, of course. I mean, he's Indian, but I take it he isn't a Sikh. So is that what you brought on?
Yeah, so Kabir is so he's Indian, and the name Bedi actually does resonate with Sikhs, but also some Hindus are called Bedi. But I think he comes from that part of that lineage that is a Sikh lineage, but he doesn't wear a turban in real life. And again, he was an actor that I hadn't really come across, and he was a massive in places like Italy, where he'd done this thing called Sandokan the Pirates, which was a spaghetti buccaneer thing. So not quite spaghetti western, but it was one of those things, which probably explains why he's huge in Italy now. He recently did their Big Brother.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's brilliant.
and they love him, and he speaks Italian fluently, and he's brilliant. And so, he was well known for that. He'd done a couple of other things, and then obviously he got pulled into this film, Octopussy. which really propelled him, because all of a sudden he got attention of Hollywood, and he was signed up to do Dynasty, or as Americans say, Dynasty, but
Right.
Dynasty, the spin-off from Dallas as well. So, and again, he just a fine man. As I said, when we first got met, I was a bit nervous because, I've got a more Western sense of humor, being born in the UK. And some of the stuff I said kind of went over his head, and I think maybe some of this isn't going to resonate. But after a little while, he got the measure of me, and he realised when I was kind of like having a joke and when I wasn't. But again, it was terrific. He was like, mi casa su casa. This is your trailer. You can do what you like here, and whatever. He'd always inquire, have you eaten? And yeah, I've had lunch and so on. In fact, I've been up twice. But I've eaten. He was always, just really a very caring sort of person, which I think was brilliant.
Yeah, that's so good to hear again. And I mean, so you did the Turban stuff, but then is it right that you basically just had free reign to hang around and watch the scenes be filmed? And
pretty much that's it. It was exactly that. It was very much along the lines of, once you've done this, you can't leave the confines of the set, because in case his turban comes off.
Yeah, of course.
But you're literally free to go. So unlike the extras, the poor chaps that, yes, they might get, the back of their head in a shot somewhere, but they've got to stand out there in rain and shine, because when it started chucking it or whatever, they would huddle somewhere. We could come inside. They couldn't. And I had access to the kind of what I call the VIP kind of lunch bus. You could go on board and do that, and they were getting the kind of like sort of something chucked out of a bucket into it. No, it wasn't that bad. No. They would get the kind of less favourable meals. But yeah, it was really good. And so, like, I hung around. I obviously watched a fair amount of filming going on, and there were some bits that I watched with the filming that were quite amazing, like the car. So the bit in the film where the car is hit by the train on the tracks, and it's launched into the air and lands in the lake with it on top of the boat where the fishermen are. I mean, that stunt was quite something, because this was done pre-CGI.
Yeah.
So nowadays you just literally computer animate that, and people would be going, ooh. Whereas back then, you literally, to get that effect, what they did was they had to put a Hulk of a Mercedes, about 7 or 8 of these Mercedes cars with all the engines stripped out, but they still look like a ton worth of hunk of metal, into what was a cannon, and fire it over the top of the train and drop it. And they did it a couple of times, and it was that second take where it literally, when it hits the boat and so on, you think to yourself, the first stuntman kind of got out, and the second one doesn't look like he's made it, and everybody's like, and then they come back to it and see that he's out as well, and that's it. And then there was the Martin Grace, who won Roger's stuntman, who sadly got seriously injured because there was a stanchion. I mean, they took the train down particularly, and they took it down a bit that wasn't really, they hadn't been to before, and there was a stanchion in the way, and he was hanging off the side, and this thing literally, even at a decent, not a big speed, but a decent enough speed, caught him on the arm and the side, and it sort of wrecked his hip, broke his arm, collarbone, and he was in hospital for 6 months. I mean, I remember sort of the ambulances coming to pick him up for that, and that was an awful one. I mean, there was that, and then there's obviously, one must try these things as sort of as a 19-year-old, very hormonal with all these Bond girls around. It wasn't. I mean, the interesting thing was, I mean, I had this huge crush. I mean, the Bond girls, they were lovely, but they were there as Bond girls, and a few of them knew that guys are going to kind of lech over them. That's just the way things were. The one who I thought was most demure, Maud Adams, was hard, not that approachable. She'd obviously been in a Bond film before. She kind of, to me, seemed a little bit cold. I'm sure she's a lovely person, but she was just not that approachable. Or maybe I was just scared because she was kind of, But the one that I had this massive crush on was Christina Wayborn.
Oh, yeah.
And Christina was beautiful, and standing near her was just get a photo done and just being around, having a quick chat and whatever. It was lovely. I mean, I'll talk a little bit about what's happened this weekend, the 43 reunion.
Yeah, so you were there.
The highlight for me, I mean, has been meeting Christina again, and telling her I had a crush on her. And she and I just literally hit it off. So we, like I said, we just had the 40th anniversary of Octopussy here in Peterborough, organised by Martin Mulder and Anders Frey and Mark Hernandez and myself. So the four of us were kind of organising it.
Brilliant.
And it's remarkable. 150 plus tickets all sold out within a couple of days, and they weren't cheap. It was a couple £100 a pop, travel and hotels and stuff on top of that. So people spent a good amount of money, but it was terrific. And we had I'm a fan of Peterborough, so I love Peterborough. So it's great to welcome people here. We had beautiful weather, and unlike a lot of the typical Bond kind of get-togethers and stuff that happen around a studio or a hotel environment, we were at Wanstead Station, the steam railway station where the filming was done, they'd gone to a lot of trouble. They brought out the steam engines and stuff that were used in the film. There were tours down the line. We went, to where bits were filmed. We went on the steam train with ourselves and the VIP guests, 7 miles down the track to Orton Mere, which is where there were the lock gates, where the opening sequence was shot, where Andy Bradford, stuntman, who's 009, where in the clown costume goes running up and he's trying to climb what looks like a gate, and it's actually the lock where the water is. One of the Mayer twins kind of like nails him with a knife in the back or something. He runs on and then he kind of like crashes through that restaurant window or something, and that's it. And Andy was there, and in fact, in typical stunt, you can't take the stunt out the stuntman, so the guy puts on a red nose and goes climbing around this flipping thing. I'm thinking, shit, there's no health and safety here to watch you, mate, but be careful. And, we had a good number of VIP guests. So John Glenn, it was magnificent seeing John Glenn, and I did talk to him a lot this time, but he's 91 now, so, 40 years on from, 51 when the film was made, it's obviously 91 now, and really talkative, really lucid. I asked him some questions on the train journey down the line about his inspirations for directors, and Hitchcock's name came up a couple of times. He cut to how he could mix comedy in with action and suspense and everything. And he said, trying to emulate some of that, bringing out some of that into Bond was really important for him, and particularly the humor. And I think he said he liked that, the way that Hitchcock would do some of that sort of stuff in films where so that was really good. And as I said, I mean, for me, the Mayer twins are really good. Tony and David, obviously they're getting on a bit now, but again, still, I mean, they're a font of knowledge about films. They just know everything about films. I mean, it was great. I could spend just an evening with them just chatting movies. A couple of the Bond girls there. So there was Safira there was Helene, there was Alison there. So they were there. But of course, for me, it was Christina. So Christina and I literally hit it off, and she did. I don't say this lightly, but when she left, she said this was the best, and she goes, what, I really enjoyed it because we just got on, and you made this so much fun. On the evening of Saturday night, we had a gala dinner, so we had all the stuff at the station the daytime, and in the evening we went back to the hotel in Peterborough where there was a gala dinner. Apart from the food, there was some entertainments. There was a knife throwing act in there. It wasn't the Mayer twins, I have to say, because I think their aim would have been a bit cockeyed now, but it was a knife throwing act, which still got me thinking, oh god, that's a bit too risky. A lovely Q&A with John and some of the other cast and crew and stuff, which was quite nice, and even a Q&A with me, and I got to tell people my story, because I think most people there knew who I was, because I've appeared on some of these kind of podcasts and so on. It was quite surreal, people approaching me asking for my autograph, which was like, okay,
nice.
I know, don't let it get to your head, Del. And there was one lady, God bless her, who came up to me and said, I love that bit in the film where you crush the dice.
So she thought you were Kabir.
I was Kabir Bedi, so I was like,
that's flattering, isn't it, Del?
Well, it's flattering, but it just meant, I said, unless Kabir Bedi got sort of shrunk in the wash by about 2 foot, I'm not quite. I can't even pass as a mini me version of him. So I explained to her what I did, and she was like, "Oh, okay, look, so." I think it was her husband that was probably a bit more the Bond fan. I'm not sure she was, but anyway, so it was quite funny. And then at the end of the evening, I managed to sort of watch some clips of films and montage, including some footage that had been shot on Super 8 at the time with no volume on it, but it was quite something to see some stuff, old stuff, which John and none of these guys had seen before. And then I got to do, put some 80s music on to almost do a little bit of disco at the end of it, so bring me back around to where I kind of came in. But with Christina, it was fun. So when everybody was dressed up in their glam stuff, and one of the organisers gave Christina an octopus tattoo, and in the film where Maud says, or whatever, says, that's my little Octopussy.
Yeah.
Christina has to put this tattoo on. She goes to me, Del, I need to go to the kind of like restroom to put this on. Where's the restroom? I said, okay, it's a bit further down. So I kind of took her there. I said, it's there. And she goes, how do I put this on? I said, okay, I'll open the bag up. And I said, there's instructions on it. And she goes, I've got no glasses. I can't read that. I said, well, I've got my glasses. I read it. And I just said, you peel the film off, you put it. And she was putting it just about here. So just literally just there. And she goes, put some water on it and then give it a few minutes, peel that off, and it should be okay. And you've got to let it dry. And she goes, okay. She goes, I'm not going to be able to do that. She goes, can you give me a hand? I'm like, okay. But I said, I can't go into the ladies with you. I mean, my wife's in the other room, by the way, so she's there with me, and there's hotel stuff. So we actually got a disabled toilet there, and so I opened the door on this. And I said, "There's water and everything there, so we can do this." So with this door open, I'm standing there doing this. She's putting this tattoo on. I'm standing there. People kind of walking by, looking at this toilet with this gorgeous blonde lady and a guy in a suit and a turban, kind of like kind of really up close and personal. And then we get this tattoo on, and with people looking, including the hotel staff, and I'm thinking this is looking bizarre because she said, "Do you want to close the door?" I said, "No, close the door. It's going to go mad. Yeah, they're going to call for security. We'll both get chucked out of here. This will make the papers tomorrow." And then she goes, "Okay," and peel the thing off, and the tattoo's on now. I said, "That's great. The tattoo's on." She goes, "Yeah, but it feels wet, and there's only hand towels there, no dryer." So she goes, "Just blow on it." I goes, "What?" She goes, "Blow on it." So I'm now literally leaning into her chest, into her bosom, and I'm blowing. And there's this procession of people. There's a wedding reception next door, and all these people, including their kids, are walking past. And they're all, and she's looking over. She goes, "I think we might be in trouble." And I look over, and all these people stop there looking at us, like, what the hell is going on here? And I was like, "Christine, I've got to get out of here, girl. You're going to get me into trouble." And we were just laughing like a drain when we walked out of that place. And I had to go and tell my wife. I goes, "By the way, that tattoo, I just put that on." And I've been. If anybody says, they saw me blowing on her there, that was me, yeah.
Dear me. I mean, amazing how you've come from just randomly, almost by fate, getting the gig to 40 years later doing this and meeting all these people. I mean, it's the love of the film, isn't it? I mean, it is one of our favourite Bond films, and it stood the test of time as far as we're concerned.
Yeah, it's well, I think the whole thing is, and I mean, it's the franchise itself. I don't think there's many other movies. I mean, there's a lot of people that made a movie or got asked to star in it or be an extra in it or do something for it. And they probably don't have reunions every 10, 20, 30, 40 years because just this franchise so big. And also the craziness about it is, I consider myself to be a Bond fan, but the people that were there, and God love them, and this is not meant derogatory fashion, were fanatical. Some of the stuff they turned up with, I mean, there were photos there. They asked John Glenn to sign that he'd not seen. And they were kind of like, he was like, "Where the hell do you get that?" And, they had replica models of cars and stuff and imagery and stuff. And it was amazing. They spent a lot of money as well. So it's obviously more than just a passing fancy. It's like really, really serious about it. And God love them. They're brilliant. They're lovely people. And so, like I said, this thing has a life of its own. And when it comes to the film, to your point, I mean, I'll be honest with you. Obviously I was a Sean fan. I think every Bond's first film is amazing.
Yeah.
They then maybe have a little up and a down. That's the way things are. I did think to myself after I saw kind of Octopussy, it maybe isn't my favorite Bond film, and it wasn't my favorite Bond film. And I thought, that was there. That was okay. That was a bit too comedic. That was whatever. But there were bits in it. Now, that was in 1983 when it first came out. But over the years, and with the release of a number of films with things like invisible cars in them, which took the whole thing a bit too nuts, Octopussy became a very sensible movie. It could happen. It was, and that whole premise, of some demented Russian general taking a bomb over to from the east to the west to explode it and start a war. That stuff could happen today, for heaven's sake, with what's happening in Ukraine. So it's not as wild and as far-fetched as it seemed. And so, yes, it grew on me, became more and more of a favourite. And then obviously started getting calls from, God damn it, people like you, asking me to talk about it. The screenings of the film where I was asked to talk about it. It was amazing. And so when I know when Roger passed in 2017, I wrote a little piece on my LinkedIn social media business, my summer with Roger, just a little recollection. And the Guardian newspaper contacted me and said, "This is really nice. Can we take it? Put it in the Guardian?" Okay. Yeah, right. They put it in the Guardian, and then somebody contacts me and says, "I'm putting together a screening of the film in London. I'd love you to come along and tell your story there." And the amazing thing, going back to Kabir, was when Kabir and I parted company, he wrote his address and phone number for me on a piece of paper and gave it to me in Beverly Hills. It was great. Sadly, I went off to university into a life of, I wasn't going to say sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but it's actually sex, alcohol, and rock and roll. You can delete some of these afterwards. And just leave, but just leaving the sex, please. Yeah. And so that's it. The rest I don't need. And I immediately lost this piece of paper, and that was it. So I lost contact with him, and bizarrely enough, it must have been 30 years later. I've got books in the loft from my degree in genetic engineering. My wife was saying, "You're never going to do cellular molecular biology again. Get rid of this crap." And I'm like, "No, seriously." And no, get rid of this crap. I'm like, "Okay." So I'm taking these books out, and a piece of paper falls out. And of course, it's got Kabir's name and everything on it. And I'm wondering to myself, so I think, okay, was that phone works? I get to the phone, actually dial the number, and it's dead.
Yeah, 30 years is a long time.
30 years long. But 5 years later, at the screening in London, of course, one of the guys that organises it only gets Kabir on a Skype call with me at the end of the show.
Brilliant.
So he and I make kind of a reacquaintance again, and we have a really nice chat. And he's talking about how great things were on the set and the memories and stuff. So yeah, and sadly he couldn't be at the reunion because he's on a book tour and he's in Spain at the moment. He said, had it been any other time, he goes, I would have come over in a heartbeat.
Well, let's hope we can get to a 50th anniversary.
Well, let's hope so. Yeah, that'd be lovely. I'd love to see John Glenn at 101. Really, to be fair.
Yeah. Hey, so he's doing well, isn't he, for 91?
Well, he's doing very well, and he was very, very lucid and very competent, and just chatting away, walking around. Both two of his sons there, Andrew and Matthew, were there as well. They're both in the industry. So yeah, there were a good amount of also people from the editing, the special effects.
Yeah.
So John Richardson, people like that. There's a load of people there. So there's quite a few too many to mention, but it was lovely. And I think the nice thing for me was that as one of the kind of co-organizers of the thing was the reaction for the people, because people kept saying to me, have you enjoyed yourself? It's been a good time. And I said, actually, I have. But the most satisfying thing is that you guys are enjoying yourselves. Yeah. Are you enjoying yourselves? And people were saying, absolutely. They said this thing, as I said, it's not set in a hotel, so we're out indoors, we're doing stuff, a lot of activities and stuff and whatever. A lovely setting, and I think people loved it, So, I mean, and the weather was so kind to us. It was beautifully warm. And so people were like, yeah, this is amongst one of the best Bond things we've ever been to. Can't wait for the next one.
That's so good. I mean, yeah, we're gutted we missed it. We were a little bit too late for the tickets. But even online, seeing, on Bond fan sites on Facebook and Twitter and the amount of reaction it's got, even just people seeing videos of, whoa, these are there's Christina Wayborn, there's John Glenn.
Yeah.
They're like, this is incredible. And to see them where it was filmed, I know Stephen Burkhoff was meant to come as well, but
Stephen last minute wasn't able to be there, which is very disappointing because I actually really like Stephen. I've seen him in not just Bond roles, but in some classical.
Yeah.
And I think he scares the shit out of me, to be
fair. Still today,
But he is very authoritative and great. But so sadly he couldn't, and it's just one of those things. I mean, I think we got a really good showing of all the people that we booked up. They all came up. There was a short video put together of people like Maud and a few others who would have liked to have been there but couldn't be there. So they sort of sent messages to say they couldn't. And we had a lovely little piece as well of a remembrance as well of those people who were involved in the film that couldn't make it, from people like Martin Grace and the stuntman and so on, right through to other people in production, and of course Roger as well.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good, Del. Thank you so much for spending time with us and telling us about this, because the fans love hearing these stories. Just that insight to what it was like 40 years ago, and to celebrate everything to do with Octopussy, which we are obsessed with. So it's class.
Okay, Thomas, let me add one other thing in here. So the other thing is that there was also a book launch happened on the day as well, on the Saturday, and it's my good friend Mark Hernandez, who he's a Bond head as well. So and he took it to another level, because what he did was he's connected with the Nene Valley Railway too. So what he did was as a bit of a labour of love over the last 2-3 years, he went out to try to find people that were there at the time. I mean, he was only 9 years old when this was made. So he took it upon himself to find extras, people like myself involved in the film, to get around to cast and crew and others and whatever, get their memories, get their photos, put them together. And he's created a fabulous book called On the Train Tracks, filming of Octopussy and GoldenEye, because GoldenEye also had sections filmed at Nene Valley Railway. And that book is, I mean, it's terrific. I mean, everybody that came pretty much bought a copy of it. So it was great stuff. So look out for that. It's going to be probably on Amazon and bookstores or whatever it is. But it's great. I mean, chapter 18 is me, Turban Tire for Hire.
Right, excellent. No, I'll have to check this out.
And I got to sign people's books. They all asked me, "Could you sign that bit there?" And I was whatever. So I signed it with my message of "No time to tie."
Very good.
Exactly. You've got to think of this stuff spontaneously. Be original.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I mean, again, if folks want to learn more about Octopussy, what happened, it's a great coffee table book. It's a terrific read. I started looking at it last night. I was a bit tired, but I started looking at it last night and picking out people and places and reading some of the stories that they had to say about the filming, which is remarkable. So yeah, I highly recommend it. It'd make a nice Father's Day gift or whatever it is. It's called On the Train Tracks.
We'll definitely promote that, Del. And it is the stories that dwell on, that we can sort of go back to and look at these films. That this is 40 years old, franchise is 60. Let's hope we get a new one fairly soon. But until then,
we hope so.
All right.
We hope so.
Brilliant, Del.
You can hear loads of our other episodes on iTunes, Spotify, and our YouTube channel, where we have interviews, special episodes, and reviews of all the Bond films. Simply search Really 007 Pod, and you should find loads of weird and wonderful content.
Remember, you're only president for life.